Welcome back to Tansson Talks. I'm Brandon, the host of the show, and I always love doing this. Well, heading into episode 104, I'm very excited to speak with my guest here today, Jake. Welcome to the show.
Thank you once again for having me on the show. I'm really excited to talk about everything we have to talk about.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to have you. So, first of all, Jake, how is your day going thus far?
Well, it pretty much just started, but can't really complain.
Well, that is, let's say, good to hear, and I hope that your day continues off well. And Jake, if we can go ahead and get started by having you introduce yourself for the watching and listening audience here today.
Of course. So my name is Jake. I'm a third year communications studies student, concentrating in digital media. I attend Longwood University, and I also have a minor in women's gender and sexuality studies, which I actually just added last week because I already had half of the class requirements. Um, and yeah, I'm currently just working towards getting my degree. I'm involved in several organizations on Longwood's campus, such as the Longwood Ambassadors and the Honor Student Association, as well as I serve as the camera operator for ESPN Plus.
Well, that is certainly exciting. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and so I'm just very excited for us to dive into it. And so, since you mentioned that, of course, you are a third year student, so how has your junior year been for you thus far?
It's definitely been interesting in both good ways and some not so good ways. I've definitely had some struggles um, along the way. However, I think when those struggles came along, I've been able to easily adapt myself and come up with solutions to reach you know, a light at the end of the road. So I think in the long run, I think it's been very well. I've gotten to meet and talk with some very great people that have been pretty much by my side on this journey. And yeah, I think it's going really well. I mean, with the exception of one class that I got to be in.
Well, nevertheless, though, that's still a pretty, like I said, high mark. But I definitely know the feeling of someone that's like, a B.
Mhm. It was a class that wasn't towards my major, so I mean, I can't say I didn't expect to, get an A in it, but I mean, B is still a B.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, like I said, the second highest, mark up there. And so, but yeah, and so to take a step back, and so, how have you been enjoying, like I said, the 2.5 years up to this point? And to give a little background for the audience, had Longwood always been where you wanted to go?
So I started touring schools my junior year of high school. I had no idea where I wanted to go. I just started going to schools and looking at the campus and taking it from there. Longwood was always on that list. However, after I toured the school, it didn't always remain number one. For the longest time, it was Mary Washington that was number one, which is a beautiful campus. And I think I would have also succeeded had I chosen to go there. Um, but when I received my acceptance letter from Longwood, I did go back and tour a second time, and it felt so much better. I felt pretty much already at home, even though I was just accepted into the school. I got to see pretty much the entire communication studies department, which I instantly fell in love with because we have an entire room dedicated to, a mock TV studio. We have a student radio station there, which I did. Um, I hosted a show for about a year, and that was really fun. And yeah, I think had I not chosen to go to Longwood, I don't think I would have gotten as much of this real world experience within just a typical classroom setting. So I think that's one of the highlights that I've definitely been able to take away from these 2.5 years. So
That's great. And I'm so glad that you were able to have your own radio show. And I definitely want to, like I said, circle back to that in a moment. But I'm so glad that, like I said, the college tours were able to help you in that regard. And and help guide you. And so, what made you decide to want to do communication studies? Had that been something that you were always interested in?
So when I started touring in schools, I didn't know the communications major was a thing. I thought I thought my love of movies and my love of music was just going to be a hobby. And then when I looked at Longwood, I noticed that they had a communications field where I basically was like, you get to work in a TV studio, you get to create news articles, you get to make video projects, stuff like that. And the head of the communications department at the school is one of the greatest people I've ever had the privilege of meeting. He always keeps in contact with all of his former students. He always keeps track of everything that they've gone on to do. One of them actually works for the WWE. One of them was a production assistant on season 4 of Stranger Things. So after hearing like all of the stuff that they have been able to do, it really opened my eyes to really what could I do with this degree. And yeah, again, going back to what I said before, it is able to take something I love, which is movies, which is something I've always loved, and basically make a career out of that. So I think it's definitely been one of the best decisions I've ever made. So
I love that, and I'm so glad that you were able to take a passion that you already had, that you already knew that you had interest in, I mean, and make that into a major. Because I know, even for myself, when I was going into my university, it's just like, okay, major, what can I do? And I mean, I I knew generally about the communication field, but I had no idea that there were so many different parts to it, and so for me, and being able to speak with my university's different members of the department, I was able to figure out what my actual major, what I said, would be within communication. So I'm so glad I was able to work out for you. And so, how was the adjustment heading into college?
well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was kind of scary. Um, as any first year student would be, any fresh out of high school, 18 years old, you spend all this time living with your parents, and then you're pretty much thrown into this world where you have to live independently. You have to basically provide for yourself. You have to make lists of everything that you need to do. And for the most part, you don't really have people there to remind you what stuff that you need to do, because that's pretty much all on you. Um, but in terms of that, I feel like I've adjusted pretty well. And in terms of, meeting new people, that's pretty much what the whole first week of me being there was for. Over the course of these 2.5 years, I've met some, as I said before, incredible people that have, both students and faculty that have basically been on this journey with me and have been with me every step of the way. And I've had the privilege of, serving as a college tour guide. I get to show these prospective students basically what campus life is all about. I basically get to talk about my personal story. So I think that's another thing that I've really benefited from. And also, as somebody who was in the honors college, I've served as um, an honors mentor twice. So an honors mentor is basically you assist a group of honors students into adjusting into life at Longwood, more specifically the honors college, and I've had the privilege of doing that twice. So I've taken two groups of students under my wing, and I still talk to most of them because I've gotten to see how they've adjusted, how they have benefited from the college experience thus far, and basically how um, they're liking Longwood. So I think in terms of me adjusting, I think I've done a pretty good job. Um, and I'm glad to say that I've had an impact in helping others adjust as well.
I'm so glad, and that's great that you were able to serve as a honors college mentor, not just once but twice.
Mhm.
And so, what does that entail overall, and how did you get a chance to have that opportunity?
So the Honors College at Longwood does something called the Honors Retreat. It's about 4 to 5 days long. It's the week before classes start, and it's basically an introduction to the Honors College. You get to, but it's not just that. You also get to go out and explore the community of Farmville, Virginia, which is where Longwood is. And if you go there, you know how small of a town that is. So to some, there's not really that much to explore, but there is, once you step outside of the campus, there really is a lot to see. Um, so it's more so that you get to do some community service along that time span. There's a bunch of different places. We have state parks. We have trails that people go and serve on all the time. We have a bunch of different places that people go and um, give back, food banks, all that fun stuff. There's also times where we get to just hear from faculty and basically how they see the perspective of adjusting to college. So it's really just you get all of this in the time frame of a week. It sounds like a lot, but it goes by so fast. As somebody who has done it as a student, as an incoming student, and then as a mentor twice, and possibly a third time, um, it really is something that's beneficial to not only us mentors, but for these new incoming honor students.
I love that you're able to really get involved and hone a little bit of your leadership skills in that regard. I think that's just so outstanding, and especially considering that you've been in the program, yourself. And so, is there anything that you had brought in from, from you being a student within these programs to now being a mentor?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I was able to take away is basically showing them how, it's not all bad. It's not all as bad as it seems. It seems like a lot, but if you take the time to get to know the people that you're surrounding yourself with and actually enjoy the stuff that we're, planning out and the stuff that we're doing, because there are plenty of times during that 4 day time span that honors students and honors mentors get to just intertwine and mingle with one another. So the biggest piece of advice that I was able to give to them is simply take your time. There's a lot to see, there's a lot to do, but if you're waiting for it to be over, it's not going to be worth it in the end.
I love that sentiment. And I mean, that is so true. I mean, because on one hand, I mean, I know that there's some experiences that people overall just don't enjoy as much, but yeah, this is the beginning of your college journey, and I mean, for most of us, this is about 4 years. I'd hate to, wake up every day for 4 years and be like, oh, okay, this day is almost over. Yeah, let's just get to it. That at least there's some people like yourself that are able to guide you, encourage you, and to push you to do great things.
Right. And as I mentioned before, I am actually on exec for the Honor Student Association. So, and that's, as we say during the retreat, that's the first organization that honor students get to join. So that's another way that that's basically a continuation of what the retreat was. So we do like social events, we do community service, we do philanthropy events, we do all this fun stuff to basically get honor students more involved with their campus as well as the Farmville community as a whole.
Had you always aspired to do this leadership side of it?
Oh, 100%. 100%. This was something that I've been a part of um, since my first semester, and I've been able to stick with it. With I can't say for everybody because not everybody sticks with it. It's usually like a one semester they go to all these events, and then the next semester they're pretty much gone because they've explored all of these other paths that they find, I don't want to say more interesting, but they appeals more to them. Um, but yeah, before I've taken on the leadership role, I've actually been able to plan some of our philanthropic events. Um, we host a formal every semester, so I've had the privilege of planning that. I've also had the privilege of serving as the historian for that, so I go to all the events that we do and basically take photos and document them. And now I run the Instagram and take notes at every meeting.
Okay, well, that's exciting. Definitely, yeah, moving up and taking on more responsibilities.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's served as a secretary before and as somebody who runs another social media page, it really is not the most stressful. You pretty much just get into the swing of things and just, you got to keep track of all the stuff that is discussed, all the stuff that, you know, students want to be brought up at some point. Yeah,
That's exciting, and I definitely did want to, yeah, circle back to what you were mentioning earlier, and that for a year you had a chance to host your own radio show. So, how was that experience for you?
I think definitely it was something that put me on the path to what I actually wanted to do with my career. Because going in, I didn't think radio was even a possibility. Because I was one of those people who was like, who still listens to the radio? Um, Unfortunately, it's not a lot of people, but it's more people than you think. So being able to do my own show with something that I already love, basically, I got to talk about movies and play songs from those movies, which I thought was totally awesome at the time. I've had a bunch of people on my show, so we basically just got to talk about, not only the movies, but what they're doing on campus and basically pretty much what you're doing right now, in a sense. Um, However, I did end it after a year just because I wanted to take a break and venture out into other possibilities and explore other paths of college. I didn't want this to be, like the one thing that consumed me. And unfortunately for me, um, I did actually end up taking on an internship at a radio station up in Norfolk. So I still got that experience, and they basically said, "Hey, when you're done with school, come back and see us."
Okay, now that is exciting. And how did that come about, and how does that, yeah, make you feel?
So after I was like, "I'm done with doing the radio show," I basically got to it, and I was like, "I want to continue doing radio, but I just didn't want to make it feel like a chore." But you get what I'm saying? So basically after that, I basically sent emails to all of the radio stations in my area. Basically, I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for an internship. Do you guys offer anything?" This one company, I'm not going to say what it is, but they basically emailed me back. I was like, "Hey, you can come in for an interview on January the 3rd or whatever." And so I went, and they hired me on the spot. And then I got to do 8 weeks during the summer, and that was so much fun. And I'm hopefully going to be able to do the same thing again. I'm not sure if it's the same company or maybe go out into like the Richmond area because given I've lived in the 757 my entire life, I kind of, want to explore other areas.
Yeah, that definitely makes perfect sense. But I'm glad at the very least you were able to start off at your, yeah, your college home and then head back to the 757 Hampton Roads area. And so now hopefully you'll get a chance to explore a new area, which I guess will be a further different uh, demographic for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most different because I've been to Richmond like plenty of times because I have two sisters that live up there. So that area is for the most part very familiar to me, but not entirely, not as familiar to me as the 757, obviously. Um, but yeah, I'm just somebody who, if the opportunity stands, I'm going to take it. And if that opportunity means going out and exploring different areas, then that's definitely an opportunity that I feel like I should definitely be taking.
Well, that's exciting. I definitely want to dive into all of those just a little bit more too. And so, And so, since you mentioned that you want this to help propel your, less of your current thoughts for your future career, are you able to let us know, like, what do you want to do as your end goal?
So after interning with the radio station, I definitely want to do something within the field of radio, whether that be in the sales department, um, doing like voiceover for commercials and stuff, or simply being one of the people that's over the air, which I didn't want to burst my own bubble, but it's not super likely that that last part's going to happen. Um, More on that in a bit, but the internship basically allowed me to explore the different fields of radio because honestly, going in, I was like, it's going to be people in a studio talking in between songs, and that's it. I didn't know that there was so much other stuff that basically went into it because of the whole sales department that basically, reaches out with clients and basically talks to them to get their commercials over the air. There's a whole like marketing department that basically, goes out and does events at certain locations from 757, and not only are they promoting the radio station, but they're helping promote the place that they're at on social media. And then there's obviously the music portion. So there's scheduling music. There's obviously um, reaching out with the record labels to get their songs played on the radio station. And there's obviously the people that talk over the air, which most of the time those two roles intertwine with one another. So it's usually you're not going to just be doing one thing. You're going to be pretty much doing a whole bunch of stuff, but you're going to be able to dip your toes into the stuff that you like to do more often than other stuff.
Well, I'm glad that the position allowed you to be, versatile. And you just mentioned in passing a moment ago that that there's one aspect of this dream that you don't think is going to quite work out for you, and so you're able to let us know, why you think it won't work out.
Um, so spoiler alert. Most of the time when people talk over the radio, they are not live. They do something called voice tracking, which is basically where they record everything in advance and then it just plays out um, whenever the time comes. But it's not super unlikely that that's gonna, not happen. And I say that because the people that I worked with at this internship basically were like, "Hey, your voice is awesome. We got to put you on." So there's a chance that people are gonna hear this voice and be like, "Yeah, I want you on at 3 to 7." So yeah,
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and yeah, you have a amazing voice, and I love the way that you're able to present yourself, through the through the audio format, even in our conversation now.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and backtracking, yeah, when you had, well, I said, your radio show back at Longwood, yeah, you mentioned a little bit as to, of course, what you did, and and the time span that you did it, and so when it ultimately, came down to it, like, how was it for you to make the decision to, let's say, to not pursue it? And I know you mentioned the reasons why, but was this something that happened over time, or was this sort of um, like a decision made all at once, or how was that for you?
So when I was coming to that end point, over the time span of a year, I was like, this. I feel like I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not really changing anything about it. Um, so I didn't really know how to go about that. I figured the best thing for me to do is to just end it right here, right now. Um, I had plans to eventually come back with something different, which um, basically would allow me to explore other venues and not only songs that were heard in movies for like X amount of seconds. Um, but I think when it came down to it, it really was the best decision for me because um, when I look back, I didn't get nearly as much experience working with radio at the station that I did with my internship. So I think I needed that more experience, and I feel like I just needed to um, take the break and come back when I was ready.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And out of curiosity, just for us listening, so what was the title of your show that you had?
Oh, wow. So my show was called Groovy Movies, which is a song by the Kinks. And I did it because obviously songs for movies. But I also just wanted to be somewhat creative with it. I didn't want to just go to like Chat GPT and be like, type me up a radio show name for this, and this. I wanted to be like, I'm gonna take from known IP and sort of put my own spin on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely does make sense. And yeah, and like, what was the duration length of the show? Like, was it a half-hour show or an hour?
It was only about an hour, so that was about like 15-ish songs.
That makes sense. And yeah, and I know you said that every once in a while that you had different guests on as well. And so, how did that feel being able to, yeah, to interview others, and especially like your first time being able to, yeah, to do that? Did it feel natural, or did it take some adjustment to get used to that?
So the first time I did it was with my friend who was also part of the radio station, who eventually became my roommate. So then it just felt very natural. And for the duration of the time that I was able to get people on, it was really just people that I knew and people that I wanted to talk with. So it really wasn't that deep. If I knew the person, there was a good chance that they were going to be put on the show.
Well, that's definitely was fair, and I know, like, yeah, for many of my early, yeah, guests on the podcast were definitely people I knew or people I wanted to catch up with, and yeah, of course, just has progressed from there to now, I believe, 164 guests to include yourself, and so yeah, and so going back though, so now that you've gained all of this, yeah, like I said, experience from your internship to your 1 year radio show, and of course your numerous leadership positions, do you feel like that you've definitely grown over the over the course of these 2.5 years of college?
100%. Coming in, I was like, okay, I'm going to be, you know, I knew I was going to be talking with these people. I didn't know exactly how it was going to end up in the end. And I mean, I eventually ended up picking stuff that I didn't even imagine that I would be doing my freshman year. Because, I mean, with the whole tour guide thing, I didn't even think that I was going to be able to um, give tours of campus because I simply didn't think I was knowledgeable enough to be able to do that. But look at me now. And I've also applied to Mortarboard, which is the basically collegiate honor society. They help put on and plan one of the biggest events on campus, which is Oktoberfest. Which is, if you want me to talk more about that, I can. Um, and yeah, so I applied to do that. I didn't really think I was going to be able to do that my freshman year. I've also, never mind. That's pretty much it. It was just those two. That
Well, that makes sense, and yeah, I definitely would love to learn more about Oktoberfest.
so Oktoberfest is something that we do in the fall semester of um, each academic year. Basically, it's a big festival where all of the Longwood campus comes together and has a fun time. So all of the organizations will actually set up booths around like one particular part of the campus because it's that part where the entire day takes place. Um, so there's that. We get some student groups to perform because there's a bunch of student music groups on campus that perform at various events, and Oktoberfest is usually one of them. And then at the end of the night, we round it out with a headliner musician. So in the past, we've had Taylor Swift, Post Malone, J. Cole, just to name a few.
That's amazing. And out of curiosity, out of the headliner musician, was there anyone that you were particularly like a big fan of? Like, would you have a favorite from your 2.5 years thus far?
So I have to admit, when we get these musicians to come, it's usually like as they're starting to get famous or after they've already been famous. So obviously Taylor Swift or Post Malone couldn't come now, given how big they are. But this past year, I think Waka Flocka Flame, he came and he put on an awesome show. So he would definitely be the highlight of my 2.5 years.
Well, that's great, and yeah, but before I had let's say ask a little bit more about your actual academics, I did want to to ask you, since I know that you said that you are a camera operator for ESPN Plus, and first of all, congratulations on that opportunity. That's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this was another thing that, now I'm thinking about it, I didn't really think, even last year I was going to be able to do. Ultimately, I was like, I don't want a job on campus. I don't want it to take up too much time because I want to be able to focus on my academics as well as the other extracurriculars that I'm part of. And um, so for one of our classes of media production, we actually had to do voluntarily two field hockey games during which lasted up until October. So I was able to do both of them, and I was like, "Hey, this is actually kind of fun." So I'm like, I can do this for money. So now I am a camera operator for ESPN, and I'm primarily working with the basketball teams and the basketball games because we actually just opened up a I think about 30,000 seat basketball stadium called the Joan Perry Brock Center, which is on the Longwood campus. So it's very convenient for me to just go there and work with all the equipment and watch a game in the process.
Okay, that is amazing. I'm so glad that that you were able to have that experience. That you were that you had to do two field hockey games. Yeah, first voluntarily and out of curiosity, was that also as a camera operator?
Yes, that was like the one thing that we were pretty much allowed to do, because there really wasn't that much else for, because field hockey is a much smaller sport, and not many people are going to be watching it televised as opposed to a basketball game. Now, given that we don't have a football team, basketball is like our big sport at Longwood. Um, so yeah, when it simply came down to it, I think being a camera operator for those two field hockey games was very, very beneficial.
That's great. And out of curiosity, do you like sports?
I can't say that I'm the biggest sports guy, um, because I really don't watch like the NFL or the NBA unless, of course, it's Longwood playing. Then I know pretty much everything that there is to know. But I can't lie when I say that, you know, watching these games are not at least entertaining because they 100% are.
I 100% understand that. I know for myself, I'm not the biggest sports person myself, but when it comes to being behind the camera or directing or something, it's just like I know what I'm doing. I can do it, and it's so enjoyable being able to be there, support the teams, and yeah, I feel like it feels so rewarding and it feels extra special, like having a position there, and not just being like a spectator. That's like and I'm not sure how it feels for you, like knowing that you're not only being able to see, like for instance, the field hockey games or the basketball games, but you're one of the people behind the camera that people are seeing your shot on air or streaming.
Yeah, like I've gone back and watched the highlights of the field hockey games and the basketball games, and I'm like, I did that shot. So it's very cool to see your work being posted up on, you know, on the live stream for everybody to see, and then later on YouTube for even more people to see.
I mean, that's bragging rights for life right there.
It's really something that's an absolute honor to be able to do.
That's great. And of course, even though you mentioned that, like I said, your passion is for radio side, how does that feel now? Also having this experience on the video side of things.
It gives me a sense that even if radio doesn't work out, I still have some experience that I can fall back on. And I'm not saying that, this is a plan B. This is basically allowing me to be like, how many doors is this going to open up versus how many doors is radio going to open up? Which is a very comparable number. Um, it's definitely more than radio, but I'm like, I've already made these connections with the people in radio, and now I'm making more connections with the people with ESPN and the people with the sports broadcasting world.
That's great. And now that you have, like you said, experience, of course, on the radio side, now on, what's it, the sports video side. So overall, like, how did your academics come into play for this? And so, since you mentioned that you're studying communication studies with a focus in digital media, so like, what does that entail for Longwood? Because I know every university and every department does things just a little bit differently.
So for digital media at Longwood, it primarily entails video production and video editing, as well as news writing. So I've taken classes that have basically was like, hey, go out and shoot like a day in your life type video, which was one of the projects that I actually did do. I can't say I'm the most proud of that particular project, but it did definitely help me um, enhance some skills, especially working with a Canon Rebel T7. You work with that camera so much, you just know exactly what it's called, as well as the JVC 4K. And you basically go out, shoot a bunch of footage with that. You are able to interview people and tell stories along the way. And that's one thing that I've definitely loved to do is tell stories from other people's perspective. And so for news writing, it's sort of similar, but it's on paper. You're going out and interviewing people about a topic that you choose. So if like the Student Government Association enacts a new rule or something like that, you can go out and interview people like on the Student Government Association, um, basically talking about how they came to that decision. Interview students basically like, how has this impacted you? And because the main thing, it's not just one perspective, it's as many perspectives as you can get. And that's like the one thing that, no matter what you want to do, that's basically the motto that you got to live by. It's not just one perspective, it's everybody's perspective.
That's something that's good to know. And yeah, and circling back to that project that you had just mentioned, you said you weren't the most proud of it, but I'd love to hear a little bit more as to what that lifetime project entailed.
So, given that it was during my first year, it really wasn't. I wasn't the most educated on some of the skills, but I mean, I got a decent grade on it. Basically, it was like, hey, how do you spend a day at Longwood University? And it primarily entailed me going to my classes and then doing my extracurricular stuff. So it was very simple in terms of that. When you look at one of my projects that I've done 2 years later, you definitely see an increase in quality and a significant upgrade in terms of my ability to operate a camera and operate Adobe Premiere Pro, which has become my best friend over the course of these 2 years.
Well, that's great that you're able to see your own progression, and of course, become friends with Adobe Premiere. Hopefully, it doesn't give you too many issues, and that you're able to have smooth editing.
Oh, believe me, I've been frustrated with it before, but it eventually has all gotten resolved. I just needed to go, take a walk, eat something, and then come back and be like, oh, this is how you do that.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to figure out the little quirks of everything, make a routine, and so outside of just, of course, your studies, radio, and your video work. So, like, what's your normal life outside of everything during the academic year, and then I guess for the summer as well?
So it's not super busy. I primarily just go to classes. I get my work done. If I have free time, I usually spend it like watching a movie or playing a video game. Something to just like take my mind off of everything because, you know, even though it's a fun major, it can be stressful at times. Not so much what I have to do, but how much I have to do. Um, so yeah, it's pretty simple. And then at home, it's not super different. I really just take a lot of time to myself because, after an insanely long semester for what it feels like, I need some time to just decompress.
Well, that definitely is understandable, and for you in like in making sure that you're able to decompress. First of all, that's very important, so that way we don't burn ourselves out and don't get sucked in too much to the stress and chaos that is undergraduate education. But is there any particular like outside of movies? Is there any particular way that you like decompressing? And what's your favorite movie genre? Out of curiosity.
Oh, you should not have asked me that question. Um, I don't really have a favorite genre, um, but I will say my favorite movie of all time is the original Scream from 1996. It was actually one of the movies that jump-started my love for horror, and the way that that story is told, with not so much a cheesy narrative, but at the same time, it's sort of poking fun at all the cheesy narratives that have been told before with actors that actually know what they're doing. And yeah, it's just an insanely fun time, and it's an insanely good franchise as a whole. And outside of movies, I would say I've developed a love for trivia. Um, I was actually just at trivia last night. We got fifth place out of 40 something teams. Um, so we do this one place um, that basically does like general knowledge, and since it's the month of December, as of now when we're recording it, it's been a lot of Christmas stuff. So like Christmas songs, Christmas movies, stuff like that. It's really just a fun way to see how much you actually know and how much you could educate yourself more on the topics.
Well, that's exciting. Have you always been interested in trivia? Like, what made you pursue, was it, that passion?
Oh yeah, I've always been interested in just like little tidbits, little Easter eggs, and stuff that I'm really passionate about. Um, so to be able to go to a place and basically put all that stuff to the test, um, was a lot of fun for me. And now that I'm able to actually do a lot of this on my own, given that I just turned 21, it's a lot. It's definitely something that becomes a lot more fun when you're with other people that are your own age.
Well, that's great. I mean, and first of all, that's great that let's say that your team had made it to fifth place. And before, in terms of the movie set, right before you answered your question, even though I've never, seen it, I knew that your answer was going to be Scream. I just knew that that's what you were going to say.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I've talked about that movie. I was really hyped for um, the two sequels to come out, which I was thoroughly pleased by. So, yeah, it's a movie that just has a special place in my heart, and there's a very good reason for it.
But that's definitely great. And what actually brought you, to your love of movies? Yeah, the whole catalyst and you, wanting to pursue communication studies.
So, it started off when I was a kid. Um, when I was a kid, I wasn't the most socially adaptive, so I really turned to movies as my form of entertainment. Because when you watch a movie, you're witnessing these people that basically drive the narrative that anyone can do anything and they can do anything. So that really jump started my love for movies, basically because you get to hear a lot of stories from the underdog perspective. And then as I got older, I started looking at movies I love from a more technical aspect. So, when I was able to take a film class at Longwood, because unfortunately there is no film minor or film major, when I was able to take a film class, that basically was like, it taught me what mise en scène is, and yeah, I've not been able to look at any of those movies the same way that I have been able to when we watched them for the first time in film class.
That's definitely interesting. And would you say that having done the studies and being able to see work behind the scenes on on productions now, even though of course I know the productions you primarily work on are sports ones, but would you say that this gives you another appreciation for these films that you grew up loving?
Oh, 100%. Because fun fact, when I was looking at majors, I thought like film major. I thought that that's what I was going to be wanted to do. I came to the unfortunate realization that unfortunately I wouldn't be able to do that much with a film degree other than make movies, which realistically, as a 22-year-old fresh out of college in, you know, jet, that probably wasn't going to happen right off the bat. But yes, it 100% gives me this greater appreciation for the things that I grew up loving and the art form as a whole.
Well, that's great that I was able to give you that appreciation, and hopefully not too much debt.
One can only hope.
Well, nevertheless, though, yeah, I'm glad that you're able, like I said, to enjoy, like I said, your studies. And I did want to actually ask you about your new minor. And so, how did that come about? I know you said that you had sort of crossed the threshold for the amount of classes that you could take. So, how did that all work out for you?
So my minor, as of last week, is women, gender, and sexuality studies. Um, as somebody who has several family members in the queer community, it's always been something that has interested me. It's something that I've always wanted to educate myself on more because as I've come to the realization, the best way that you can support people is by educating yourself. Because if you're uneducated, you're going to seem like a bad person, even if you're not trying to be a bad person. So this past summer, right before I started my internship, I actually had the privilege of going to San Francisco for a week, which is very famous for having a lot of, um, you know, LGBTQ plus history because it's nicknamed the queer capital of the world. And so I got to basically talk to a bunch of people, talk to a bunch of stakeholders that like have been in the city for, decades. Some people that own small shops and basically other people that have been positively impacted by the city as a whole because everybody's perspective is very different on the city. Um, and so I got to not only talk to the people that live there, but I also got to, spend time with the other people that went on that trip, which I've grown a very close connection to. And they were some of the driving forces that sort of were like, hey, you should pursue this minor. And the main faculty member that went on the trip is somebody who I'm very close with. And she, when I had the interest in adding the minor, I basically went to talk to her, and she was like, "Oh, 100%, you have to do it now. You've already crossed off 3 out of the 6 required classes, so yeah, I mean, it's not that difficult to get at this point. So it's definitely something that, sparked my interest. I'm not sure exactly where it will take me, but if it's one way that's going to educate myself even further, then it's something that I'm all in for doing.
Well, that's great. And would you say, and how would you say that it's been able to impact you, especially on a personal level?
It's definitely opened my eyes to, as I mentioned before, more perspectives because everybody's perspective with being um, in this community and even a part of this community or even associated with this community has been very different. Some people have been, very positively impacted for varying reasons. Some people have been very negatively impacted for various reasons. Um, so it's definitely been something that has opened my eyes to not just my own personal stories and the stories that I know from heart, but the stories of others because they're not the same.
Well, I'm glad that was that you was that we're able to learn so much and being able to incorporate that into your own knowledge, especially given, like you said, not everyone's stories are the same. I mean, yeah, some people have very different stories, yeah, positive or negative, and so it's important to, yeah, learn and understand, where everybody comes from. And so I love that you're able to explore that, yeah, as you are progressing forward with your career. And you mentioned a little earlier too that you recently had your 21st birthday, and so how long ago was that as of recording?
It was about 2 months ago. So we went and just got drinks at this bar that's in Farmville. It's a very popular hotspot for all the college students. Um, and that's basically where I had my first drink at. It was interesting at first, but once you got out of that, the weird feeling of it, it just became natural. It became, second nature, if you will.
That makes sense, and hopefully responsibly, of course.
100%.
But yeah, and overall, would you say that you've been able to, as I said, yeah, and so yeah, from when you started in 2021 to now, would you say that, as that overall, that some of your interests have changed? That I know you spoke, of course, that you've been able to, yeah, learn a lot and progress, and progress as a person, but overall, even some of the stuff that you enjoy doing in your downtime, would you say that that's, yeah, changed to where you are now, and even some things that you may want to explore as you enter the second semester of this year and even senior year?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they've changed. I would say that they've more so just been added on. Because I don't see myself like growing out of this interest. I feel like I've been able to just explore said interest at a much deeper level than I've explored it before. But yeah, I think through classes and through extracurriculars and through meeting new people, I think it's just expanded on. And I've taken interest in different things because when I started school, it was pretty much just movies, and that was it. Now I've grown into something that's like incorporates movies into all these other things that I'm also learning that I'm interested in. So I would say it's just adding on to what I'm interested in.
That makes perfect sense. And Jake, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we, yeah, begin closing up this conversation?
I actually wanted to talk a little bit about my experience as a Longwood tour guide. Um, so as a second semester freshman, that was when I was allowed to basically apply to be a tour guide. And as I mentioned previously, this was something that my first semester I didn't really have much interest in because I didn't think I was super knowledgeable on the campus as a whole. I didn't really think I would be good at connecting with new people and talking with families about the school that I go to. But when I actually spoke with a close friend of mine who basically told me about the organization as a whole, she was like, "Yeah, you should go to an interest meeting. It's so much fun. We not only do a bunch of tours, but we also do a bunch of stuff that bonds us together as a community, which realistically, that's what set me on applying to the organization. And over time, this has allowed me to um, expand my knowledge of Longwood's campus as a whole. but it's also allowed me to, connect with people that I'm not super familiar with, which I'll admit was not something that I was super great at my first semester and before. It's also given me, like I said before, more leadership positions because I do currently hold the position of historian. So my main responsibilities for that is, you know, taking our composite pictures. So if you see a photo on LinkedIn from a Longwood ambassador, that's probably where it was taken from. That was also where my current LinkedIn profile picture and Instagram profile picture and all of the other social media profile pictures, that's where that was taken. So that's something that, allows me to take the knowledge that I've learned in the classroom and use it for an organization that I truly love.
Well, I'm so glad. I mean that you're able to. I mean to take that knowledge, and yeah, embrace it and use it to show others and help encourage others to attend Longwood, just as of course, yeah, you did.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's going to be one of the highlights of my college career.
That's great. And would you say that? Yeah, and would you say that you've been able to find some like hidden gems, yeah, through exploring the campus? Some places that you think are maybe underutilized, or places that you would call like your home.
Oh, yeah. Um, I would say not outside of this organization, but through just being on campus as a whole has allowed me to see other areas of the campus that I didn't know existed previously.
Well, that's great. And would you say that, like, if someone listening here were to potentially, like I said, want to attend Longwood or perhaps just visit the campus, is there anywhere that you would say that this is the go-to spot? This is the place that you have to visit if you were to make one visit to Longwood.
Yeah, I mean, you got to visit the Rotunda. It's the most historic place on the campus. Um, but yeah, as I was saying earlier, the best part of Longwood's campus that you have to visit, even if you're just visiting the campus and not on a tour, is the Rotunda. It's the most historic building on campus because little Longwood history. It used to be an all-female school, and when it was an all-girls school, that was pretty much the entire school. It's where they ate, where they slept, where they went to class, where they did everything. Now it's just used for classes, but there's a lot of really historical elements that I think contributed to Longwood's history as a whole.
But that's great that you're able to, like I said, to understand that history and, like I said, add it to your appreciation of, yeah, of the university. And would you say that you like history overall?
It's something that has fascinated me. I don't think I could do it as a major though. I think when I'm learning about history on my own time, it's more fun than learning about it in a classroom. But obviously, I don't speak for everybody because I know some history majors that absolutely love being a part of the history program and they love being um, able to learn about you know those specific time periods. I personally like to explore you know time periods that more so interest me, and um, yeah, from what I gathered on my own, it's really fascinating what I've been able to dig up.
That's pretty cool. And since you mentioned that you prefer learning on your own, which I 100% understand as a research enthusiast, I much love doing my own research than having to do research for class. Don't get me wrong, I love my classes, but I, yeah, much prefer my own research. But since you said you have a specific time period that you like, which time period is that, out of curiosity?
So it's not so much more of a historical time period; it's more so just from a pop culture standpoint. It would have to be like the '90s and the early 2000s. Given that I was born in 2003, I was pretty much born smack dab in like the time span of all of that stuff going down. Um, Obviously, I love '90s music. I love '90s pop culture. It's definitely a product of its time. Some of that hasn't aged particularly well. Um, but I just so have a soft spot for 2000 pop culture, given that it's the year I was born. And it's really fascinating given that it's also something that I'm deeply interested in, like movies, TV, music, all of that fun stuff, just compiled into one big idea.
I love that. And like I said, I'm so glad that you're able to integrate so many of your interests, like I said, into your studies, alongside, of course, what you do personally as well. I mean, from radio to, like I said, to working with ESPN, being a tour guide, being part of the honors college. You certainly do a lot, and like I said, I am so glad, like I said, I have, like I said, this chance to speak with you. And do you have any hopes for the spring semester and going in and the senior year to follow?
I just hope it goes well. Um, I hope that I'm able to just learn, just continue doing what I've been able to do with um, these 2.5-ish years that I've been on Longwood campus, because it really has been, a staple of my education journey.
Well, that's certainly, like I said, great to hear. And, like I said, and I'm excited for you to continue learning and growing. And Jake, I did want to ask you, so what did it mean for you to be able to tell, like I said, your story here on, on the podcast?
It felt awesome, to say the least, because I spend, as I mentioned before, I spend all this time, hearing other people's stories. My story is not one that gets told often, except if you talk to me personally, but definitely not in a podcast setting like this. Um, so it definitely felt great to be able to share my perspective and where I'm coming from and how I've been able to grow as a person and as a professional and as a student and as a everything.
I love that. And and for you having, of course, during your 1 year of hosting, was that your show, and having interviewed people, how does it feel to be on the other side of this? Now, you being the one answering the questions as opposed to asking them.
It feels a lot smoother than I initially thought it was going to be, because from the other perspective, I was the one coming up with the questions. I was the person who was like, okay, be sure to expand upon this, um, as much as you possibly can. And now that I'm actually doing this, I'm like, okay, I know all the rules that I've set in place for my other interviewees. So I'm like, I know exactly how to do this, and I know exactly um, what he's going to expect of me.
I love that. And yeah, it's definitely, I feel like it's so interesting being, whenever you have a chance to be on the other side of it, because on one hand, it's like, oh yeah, like, I've done this, I know what to expect. But on the other hand, sometimes it's like, oh, is this what it feels like? Like, especially not being the one sort of in control of it. It's like, oh, is this what we're doing?
It's definitely beneficial to be on both sides of the interview table.
Yeah, and if anyone would like to, let's say, connect with you online to hear more about your story, where are the best places for them to do so?
The best place for people to connect with me is on Instagram, which is Jake RW 1023, and also on LinkedIn, which is Jacob Williams. You should see me come up pretty quickly.
Well, that is good to know. And yes, I definitely hope that people follow you on Instagram and connect with you on LinkedIn. And yeah, and finally, I want to allow for you to go ahead and close out this episode, whether it be a life lesson, inspirational thought, or whatever the case may be. The floor is all yours, Jake.
Oh wow. um, the biggest thing that I have taken away from my experience as a college student thus far, if you don't do it, you're going to be mad at yourself for not doing it. When you're given an opportunity to do something and you choose not to, you rightfully cannot be upset at yourself for the outcome not being particularly in your favor. However, when you do something, you have the possibility of it landing in your favor, but you also have the possibility of it not being in your favor. It's at that point where you can say, I tried and I'm proud of it.
That is so true. And like I said, Jake, this has been so fun being able to speak with you, and definitely keep me in touch as you continue on your education journey and beyond over this next year and a half.
Absolutely.
Yes, and like I said, this has been so fun being able to chat, and definitely, like I said, enjoy the holidays and finish out junior year strong and enter into senior year confident this upcoming summer.
Well, thank you so, so much for those words, and thank you for having me on. It's been a total honor.
Likewise, and for those tuning in, thank you so much as always for tuning into the Tansson Talks show. I always appreciate your support and continue tuning in for every episode as we continue on our mission to bring people together. I'll see you next time. Take care.